But Michelle, when you did the first post about the book, you had mentioned like, is this the end times? There were things you were thinking about, and so one of the questions talks about poverty. So ironically, poverty is still a big problem in this country in the book, even though everybody else is poor. So in terms of assets, what did anybody think about that still being a huge factor? Like there's poor, and then there's really, really, really poor. You know, so that was surprising to me when I first read the book. So what do you think about that and how it mirrors now, really? So.
But hasn't it always been that way? I mean, before my time, before your time, hasn't it always been that way? Like since the beginning of time?
Well, you know,
it's not a new revelation.
well, you know, JC said back in the day, the poor will be with you always.
How would you know that?
Huh?
How would you know that?
Because when I did read the Bible, it was one of those short verses that I could remember. because he was hanging out with his posse, and they looked over there and they was like, hey, you know, hey JC, how about the poor? And he looked over there, he was like, look, fool, they done been here and they're gonna be here. They're gonna be with you always. Even I can't do nothing about that. I thought that was kind of profound. Well, you know, if I may, I watched something that was very interesting today. It was on network called Fusion, and it was. Have you all seen the documentary Ferguson yet? You know, after. It's a very good documentary on what happened in Ferguson. So when I was reading this, I was thinking about Job and poverty and things like that. When we look at poverty, poverty is one of those self-inflicted things that man actually created, you know, because truly there's enough earthly resources to go around. When I was watching Ferguson today, they were talking about what happened in, you know, why Ferguson in Missouri, why it is like it is right now. They're talking about the, you know, almost, you know, 20 or 30 municipalities that had, you know, 100, 200, 3,000 people, 4,000. They was talking about, you know, they was really concentrating on the people that was on the outside of St. Louis, that they were so poor and there were minorities, and there was like within 3 miles going to the main interstate to get back to St. Louis, that the people from Ferguson and all these little townships, they had to go through like 8 townships to get on the highway, and how the little municipalities were fleecing all of the people. I mean, people, they were getting, I mean, it was crazy. People were actually getting $500 tickets for jaywalking. You know, and they had, I mean, this was just like, and they would have court rooms that would fill up to 90 people. They have 3 courts a night in this one municipality, and they was like charging people $500, $1,000, and they would have to pay. They would, you know, to keep out of jail, they would have to have payment plans. You know, and so I started thinking, I mean, this is what's going on in Ferguson and all the other towns that are around it. You know, so I started thinking about poverty. You start thinking about Job. I started thinking about that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, they were like, how could this even be going on in America? It was like you know, it was talking about indentured servitude. You know, that they were getting stopped so much, you know, in that in that towns around Ferguson. And we're not talking about, you know, we're talking about 15, 20 miles. It's just like running a gauntlet, you know, just like running a gauntlet. So I saw, you know, when I started reading this, and we start talking about poverty, when we start talking about, they're saying, you know, over half the world population lives on less than $2 a day, you know. So I don't think that's a a God thing. I think that's a godless thing. You know, I think that's a man thing.
I think that's really interesting because in the chat, God is having a talk with the main character, and the main character's questioning him basically the same way that we do. Like, how could you let this happen? You're God. Like, if you're all good, then why do you let bad happen? And it all comes down to free will. We chose free will, and He gave it to us. Then we get mad when He allows us to use free will even for negative things. So that was God's whole conversation. Like, you asked for free will when you did this, and I gave it to you, but you want me to take it back when bad things happen, and that's a consequence of free will. So, like I think Joelle is saying, in that point, I agree. People, we have free will, and for whatever reason, people don't choose to do good. And it seems like Kim was saying, Black people and minorities keep getting the brunt of this bad, and so I'm convinced the devil is white, but I know that may be problematic. So maybe he's not. Like, maybe I don't know. But something is up. So I don't know. But because it doesn't make sense. So something's going on up there, and there's a reason why we are always chosen to get attacked or eat. Something's going on. So that's just my little spiel about that. Maybe problematic. Michelle, you may have to cut that out. But that's just my.
Oh no, that's just an example of free will.
Right.
And you're not alone, Farrakhan. Hey, that's what he said. Okay, girl.
I don't know. It's just too strange. It's too much going on up here. But so did anybody else want to talk about the poor question? Access and what that means to them or what they think about it. Oh, one thing, Kim, you said that this format is interesting to you. Y'all know I'm an English major, so in English, as English majors, this is all we do. And so I think people think that, like, we focus on the narrator and the tone and the characters, but we look at how, like, real life, because these authors are writing based off of whatever experiences they've lived, and this is why the books are so great, and so well read. And so this is actually my norm. And so I didn't even think that this made a difference. So thank you for putting that out, because it didn't even occur to me that this format may be a little different.
Different in a good way.
Right. I think it's fine. I like the idea of relating to today, but I also like the idea of relating to the characters. And how the writer constructs the characters and what's going on. By the way, it's so many people in this book until I have a cheat sheet to try to figure out who is who. So they said that somebody died, and I was like, well, who that? So now I have a cheat sheet. Every time I bring up a new name, I write it down. But I like this. And I like this because the book is just such a great story. So no, it wasn't a criticism at all.
Well, I think, going back to the poor, I think is very interesting on how, whether, we're reading a fiction, about the poor in fiction or the poor in our society, how we down towards history look at people that are poor. We look at poverty as something that they are not doing right, and is everything what they're doing wrong. You know what I mean? Instead of, people are born into poverty and stay in poverty for generations, just like people are born into into money, as my grandmother would say, and they stay there. They very hard. They've been generation after generation been in some part of wealth, and they passing that along. Cause 66% of all people who are that have money are very well off or rich. They were born into it. Only 33% of them even earn it. So most of the people who are poor, they were born that way, and it's very hard to get out of poverty.
If I may, one of the characters that really struck me the most was the little girl Amy from poverty, and how unjust our just God is. Amy was born to her mother Tracy when Tracy was a very young girl, I think about 12 years old, through the rape of her uncle. Okay? And not just only being poor and born to poverty bring hunger, but for Amy it brought death. No one cared about Amy. All the, godlike people around her didn't care about this little girl. She was left with a family that was raising her, because of course Tracy was very young when she had her, through rape by her uncle that went on for years. And the way they described that, I was so heartbroken. It's like they just gave her some food and cleaned her up sometimes. Talking about poverty, Joel. Not only did she suffer from hunger a lot of times, but also they humanized her. A little girl. God had nothing to do with that. That was the so-called Christian people, the godlike people around her. So I just, that was, actually I was almost in tears when I read that, because I've seen that happen to innocent children by the so-called godlike Christian folks.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but was that in chapters 1 to 3?
Was it 1 to 3?
But
okay.
Wasn't it? Randie, I enjoyed the book so much, girl.
no, I understand. I almost
so much. I just kept it going.
when I read this book, I had to make myself stop so I could have something to read. So I understand.
And I really did enjoy this book, Randie. I was going with this book, girl. I'm just, once you pick it up, you can't put it down. I'm all in chapter 4 or 5. But and Michelle, I saw Michelle's comments. Even Venita is enjoying the book. And yes, I am really enjoying this book. But no, I really just think of Amy because he mentioned poor. And I was just trying to relate the poor to the why, so many blacks or brown people are poor. We're pretty good in this country compared to other brown people in other countries. We're doing very well compared to, and we do have some resources where a lot of brown people in other countries don't, Joel.
Man, I don't know. After watching what's going on in St. Louis, it looked like it's a third world country to me.
Well, yeah, we have places here like it's a third world country. I have some place right here in Cromwell, down by the beautiful river, where they tuck some of the poor people.
Yeah, that's one of those things that by even read.
Joel.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you adjust your camera, because we can't really even see your face?
I can't help it because I'm a black man.
I don't think that's the problem.
Right.
I'm gonna show you. I should be able to figure. I should be able to figure.
No.
I should be able to figure some things out. I should be able to figure something out.
Well, you remind me of one of my brothers who did not have a college degree. And he used to love to say to me, well, I guess it doesn't take a college degree.
I know what you say when you're around people's like, look, I'm smarter than 99% of you niggas, and I got brain damage.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Watch out now, I got my brain back.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.